Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Alrighty, all the way up here close to San Antonio Bay, Mustang Lake, the inevitable has finally happened. Our tides are finally starting to drop out of here, and they dropped out big time. So we've had these big bull tides in here for the past 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. Then over this past weekend and in early into the week, these suckers have dropped out of here. So if you were on the water any point in time the last 5 days, you've noticed this big time. So that changes your tactics and what you have to do and how you have to approach your fishing areas. Lots of these areas have got deeper guts and drains that are into them or on the outer edges of them. So these are the areas that you must start to target when that water starts to drop like that. These fish are going to pull off these flats. Like up here in Mustang, you got all this in here, and this has been great for the last 15, 16, 17 days. Water's been pushed up into areas, been able to fish it with no problem. Probably been wading some of these areas in the very back that you've been waist deep, maybe even belly deep in some of these areas, and fish have been holding in those areas really well. Now, with that drastic turn of water dropping, and it starts pulling these fish off of here, then you must start fishing these edges. If you've waded these areas, you'll know where I'm talking about. If not, it's going to be kind of a little bit more difficult for you to locate, especially if you're going to rely specifically on your Lowrance or your Garmin or whatever kind of GPS system you have for mapping or something to that effect, so you can locate those edges. But that's where the fish are going to be holding on to. They're going to hold off these edges, deeper guts, deeper drains. They congregate to that area and concentrates them pretty well. As long as you've got bait working in a lot of these areas, which you can get out here on the edge on this close to the ICW coming out of Mustang, all these areas down here come into play. Start looking for your bait working up in these areas here, because that's going to be deeper water adjacent to a flat or to flat areas. And when you've got bait, you've got grass, the transition phase is starting to take place as we've had significant drop in our water temperatures over the weekend. In the first part of the week, that temperatures have gotten down into the low 70s, upper 60s, and depending on what areas you are in. So you're going to start wanting to target your mud areas, deeper water early, shallow water late, to let that sunshine warm that stuff up. But as we continue on into November, get into December, this will be a strategy that you want to practice more and more and more. Down here in Bray, I talked about Bray all the last maybe couple of weeks. This area has become really popular because of the amount of water that we've had, pushing fish further back into some of these lakes. Now, these lakes will not become your primary target that you want to fish. Again, with the water levels dropping like they are, paying attention to your tide reports is extremely important moving forward. Fish are going to be holding off of these edges out here. Trout, redfish, flounder. Your flounder are going to be primarily going to be in your guts. But as we move into November, if you look at the new flounder regulations, you can't keep any flounder for the next, I think, 25 or 30 days, or maybe into December. Yeah, it's 1st November to the middle of December. You're not going to be able to keep any of those flounder. Trout, redfish, these drains are going to be your primary targets where you're going to locate. At least that's where you're going to want to start, and then you kind of move around, locate what you've got. Now, the smaller baits, your burner shads, have been really good in these drains. These fish have congregated into those areas. Found in good numbers of slot reds that are in some of these drains. Found some decent trout hanging out in front of these slots or these drains, looking for your slot fish that are in these areas here. Those are going to be your targets. Work out a little deeper from the shore because, again, the water's been pushed out. It's gone. So you can move further off the shoreline, 150, 200 yards out, and it's still going to be in play for you. It's not going to be too deep. So those fish will hold off in those kind of areas. If you know the structure in the bottom in these areas, if you've got some shale that's in there that's got some mud and grass, you got a little bit of bait working out in those areas, those are going to be areas that you're going to want to target. Points, guts, edges, all those areas are going to come into play, especially now moving forward. You're going to want to look at those areas. You're going to want to fish those areas. Take your time with them. Start getting your suspended baits out. Get your corkies, soft dines. A little bit softer weight as far as like a 16th ounce, maybe even a 32nd ounce. You're going to want to throw those on your plastics, your regular size down south in both the watermelon red, chicken of the sea have been really good. I would think that the supermodel will start to show up as we get closer to a new moon phase, as we are still into that transition phase. Just pay attention to that. Pay attention again. Pay attention to the tide report. It's going to be extremely important for you to pay attention to that, especially if you've got a boat that's not specifically shallow running. Even shallow running boats are going to have a little bit of difficulty until you kind of figure out what you want to do and where you want to be and how far out you got to stop to get to where you want to go. But it's extremely important moving forward to locate these types of areas. Again, find your bait, incorporate your majors and minors in there. Start out with a smaller bait and just kind of move around and see what they want to do. Down here in Port Bay, Italian Bend, Pete's Bend, all these areas down in here, from Rattlesnake Point all the way over to the 188 bridge that comes around. So you've got deeper drops that are here over in Port Bay. You've got a great area, especially when this tide drops out the way that it is. It pulls these fish off those flats, drops them off those, gets them concentrated off these edges like this. Water temperature is going to be a key thing moving forward as we head into the later fall and into the winter time. Again, fishing deeper water early, shallow water late. That's going to be your tactic to begin with. It's just give you a rule of thumb where to begin, where you want to look. Bait's going to be your secondary thing. As that water temps continue to run, our migratory baits will start bailing out of here. They'll start heading south. Your main bait that's going to be left into our estuaries is going to be mullet. So matching that with whatever bait that you're wanting to throw is going to be a key thing for you to do. Again, work these edges. If you know areas in this just from knowledge of fishing it for years or just from hearsay or whatever, if you know this type of area, fish those drops, fish the edges, fish the drains. If you know where some drains are at coming off into back lakes and you know there's deeper guts that are associated with that, those are going to be target areas. That's where fish are going to concentrate, and they're going to hold in those areas, providing that you've got some bait working around those areas. You're going to hang in and around that. Now, those situations have come up. We've been throwing burner shads. White ice specifically has been the most productive. Redfish have been eating that thing, gobbling those things up, and then progressing into a chicken of the sea in the burner shad. The platinum roach in the burner shad has been good. Also, purple rain in the burner shad. The thing that's been happening here, the pattern that you're seeing, it's a smaller bait. We've got the bait migration that's happening, the white shrimp migration that's happening. So that's one of the reasons why the white ice has been really popular. Fish are starting to see that, and they're really jumping on that white ice bait. So if you've got some of those, the burner shad, chunk them. Put them on a 16th ounce jig head, bounce those off that bottom, find you the mud, find you some little bit of shell, maybe clump. Scattered shell would be good. Grass, points, edges, drops, guts, drains. All these are going to be points of emphasis of where you're going to locate, especially down here in Port Bay, Italian Bend, off these edges like that, all the way down toward the 188 bridge. If you know this area really well, then you'll have some success finding your fish in these areas.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.